What do tractors and iPhones have in common? If you've ever cracked your iPhone screen, you've probably had to take it to the Apple Store for repairs. Sure, you could hit up a third-party shop and save a few bucks, but usually that means voided warranties, cheaper parts, and who knows what else. Now, what if I told you farmers across the country deal with a similar problem, but instead of iPhones, it's their tractors? And many use this brand. In fact, John Deere pretty much dominates the US market. And this is what a modern tractor looks like. They're no longer just machines. They're more like computers on wheels. They make farming easier, but also way more complicated. So much so that some farmers have willingly shelled out close to a whopping $1 million to buy one. You'd think after purchasing a tractor that's the cost of an entire house, you'd be able to fix it however you want, right? Wrong. When something breaks on a tractor, farmers are forced to call out a technician to fix the issue. But it goes way beyond just being inconvenient. If a tractor goes down during harvest season, it can put a farmer's entire year of work at risk. In the heartland, farmers are fighting back by pushing for the right to repair their own equipment, because this battle is about more than just fixing machines. It's about reclaiming control over their livelihood. Some farmers have even gone as far as hacking their own tractors with software from the dark web just to keep things running. So how did John Deere go from being a farmer's ally to holding them hostage? And more importantly, what's being done to turn things around? At its core though, the right to repair is about ownership. For years, companies have been nudging customers into relying solely on them or their authorized service providers whenever something breaks. The proprietary software that John Deere puts into its tractors locks them, meaning farmers are prevented from repairing their own equipment. From a company standpoint, many argue their tech and software are locked for proprietary and security reasons. But these barriers have created monopolies, where manufacturers have all the control over the repair market long after the sale of a product. Having to rely solely on authorized dealerships when something goes wrong is obviously a hassle for most farmers, especially in rural areas like this. But let's be real here. John Deere isn't just about to loosen its grips without a fight. There's big money in the repair sector for the brand. Back in the early 2010s, John Deere was riding high. The global demand for ag equipment was booming, and the company's equipment sales reflected that. From 2009 to 2013, its revenue skyrocketed from $23 billion to almost $38 billion. Farmers flush with cash from the higher commodity prices were investing heavily in new machinery, and the company was cashing in. But as we know, markets can get a little squirrely, and by 2014, the agricultural boom cooled down, and with it, the demand for new tractors. So John Deere's sales took a hit. Lower commodity prices caused tighter farm incomes, which meant farmers were now holding on to older machines and attempting to squeeze every last bit of life out of them instead of splurging on newer models. Faced with declining sales, John Deere needed a new game plan to keep the cash flowing, and they saw an opportunity. If they couldn't sell new tractors, they could still profit by servicing the old ones. And their service department had always been a solid part of the business, but now it was set to become the backbone of the company's survival. For decades, farmers used to handle repairs themselves or take their equipment to a local independent shop. Parts and manuals were easy to get, and the costs were lower since it wasn't tied to a dealership, but things were starting to change. A couple decades ago, a John Deere tractor may have set you back $50,000 to $100,000, maybe $150,000, depending on the model. But with all the new tech and software inside, prices have shot up, some even by tenfold. When John Deere started doubling down on putting more software into their tractors, it was a game changer for the entire industry. Take GPS guided planting. It helps farmers plant crops in perfectly straight rows with exact spacing so they can make the most of their land. Another big one was the real-time data that tracks everything from soil conditions to moisture levels and even the health of the crops, which helps farmers make smarter decisions. But all this high-tech convenience doesn't come cheap. Just getting access to the company's database of technical manuals can set you back as much as $3,100 a single year. However, let's say the GPS navigation system glitches. Because these tractors are so interconnected to John Deere software, fixing the issue requires software tools to even properly diagnose the problems, something farmers can't do on their own. Only authorized dealers have access and are permitted to do that. In fact, in 2015, the company insisted that farmers don't actually own the software inside their tractors, but only have an implied license to operate it, even though the farmer spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on it. So they effectively held farmers and their machines hostage to even out the balance sheet. And this strategy didn't just keep John Deere afloat during the tough times, it was thriving. From 2013 to 2019, John Deere's total agricultural equipment sales dropped by 19%, but its parts and service division surged by more than 22%, raking in $6.7 billion alone. Parts and services, it turns out, are far more profitable than selling new machines. According to the company's own filing, it's actually 3 to 6 times more profitable. But this isn't just a John Deere thing. Other industries are cashing in the same way. Apple's service department, for example, which includes repairs and warranties, brought in a jaw-dropping $85 billion in 2023. So yeah, this new approach has clearly paid off big time for John Deere and plenty of others too. As John Deere continued to tighten its grips on the repair market, its impact on farmers became more and more widespread. Over the past 2 decades, the cost of parts and labor for ag equipment has nearly doubled, and there's been a 41% spike since 2020 alone. For farmers, this means that broken equipment could lead to thousands of dollars in unexpected expenses, often at the worst possible times, like harvest season. An out-of-commission tractor can mean the difference between a year's earnings or financial ruin. If farmers had full access to repair their own equipment, it could boost productivity and efficiency, potentially saving them up to $4.2 billion every year. But John Deere defends its repair rules by arguing that locking down their proprietary software helps prevent hacking, unauthorized modifications, and the theft of their data. These strict repair rules haven't just hit farmers hard, they've also hurt local repair shops. These independent shops used to be the go-to, but now they're being pushed out because they can't access the software or tools needed to work on newer models. Farmers who relied on these local spots are now traveling farther, paying more, and waiting longer for repairs, leaving both the farmer and these small businesses in a tough spot. The solution to this problem isn't as simple as switching tractor brands either. The market for agricultural equipment is dominated by a few major players, and John Deere's competitors often use similar tactics to lock down their own equipment. So farmers have started to push back by forming a grassroots movement to reclaim their right to repair. Some farmers have even turned to hacking their own equipment by using firmware that allows them to bypass the locks. But these dark web hacks are risky. They can void warranties and potentially damage the equipment even more. But for many, it's become the only way to protect their businesses. While John Deere's been pocketing billions from its parts and services, its impact on farmers trickles all the way down to the US food supply, which means that the right to repair isn't just a farming issue. It's one that affects everyone. The good news is that recently, government interest in repair markets have put more pressure on companies. In 2023, President Biden signed an executive order that put the Federal Trade Commission on the job, pushing them to create a nationwide policy that would let folks repair their own stuff, especially when it comes to tech and farming equipment. Colorado made history as the first state to pass a right to repair legislation specifically for agricultural equipment. But progress depends on the state, and a great deal of work still has to be done. One major win happened after multiple nonprofit organizations banded together. In January 2023, John Deere signed a memo of understanding with the American Farm Bureau Federation. This deal was supposed to give farmers and independent repair shops access to tools and documentation they need to fix equipment. But here's the catch. The tools provided still fall way short of what real legislation could guarantee. They only let you do basic diagnostics or minor repairs, so when something more serious goes wrong, you're still stuck calling in an authorized dealer to fix it. And this is an ongoing negotiation. John Deere has agreed to sit down with farmers and dealers to iron out issues as they come up, and both sides have to revisit the terms at least twice a year. But advocates are still going all in, pushing for bills across the country. This year, 15 states are introducing right to repair legislation, including a big one in Illinois, right in John Deere's backyard. The future of right to repair as a whole is still up in the air, but with more states pushing for change and a growing grassroots movement, there's still real hope that others will follow Colorado's lead. With more states pushing for change, big companies are feeling the heat. The real challenge now is striking the right balance between protecting innovation and giving folks the freedom to fix what's theirs.